Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Friday here in Korea. You are tuned in to our mid-morning newscast on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us. I'm Scott Thompson, filling in for Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Timeline pushed back. South Korea and the United States agreed to delay the transfer of wartime control of Korean forces from Washington to Seoul. As widely expected, domestic demand picks up in the third quarter, but the economy still posted the slowest year-on-year growth in 5 quarters. One day after a deadly shooting in Canada's capital, the country's prime minister vows to strengthen anti-terror measures, giving more power to surveillance and security agencies. But we begin with the agreement out of Washington. The defense chiefs of Korea and the United States have finally confirmed that the transfer of operational control of Korean forces during wartime will be pushed back. The change was due to take effect next year, but now is likely to come at least 10 years down the line. Kim Min-ji has the details.
South Korea and the United States have agreed to postpone once again the transfer of wartime operational control of Korean troops from Washington to Seoul. The two allies did not set a new timeline, but officials expect the transfer to take place sometime in the mid-2020s. The decision came at the annual security consultative meeting in Washington between South Korea's Defense Minister Han Min-gu and his U.S. counterpart Chuck Hagel. The initial handover was scheduled for 2012 before being delayed to 2015. Seoul has peacetime control of its approximately 639,000 service members, but the U.S. commander of the Combined Forces Command has the control of Korean troops as well as American soldiers in case of a war in the Korean Peninsula. According to a joint statement released after the meeting, the deal was made in light of the evolving security environment in the region, which includes North Korea's nuclear and missile threats and the need to maintain a strong combined defense posture. Seoul and Washington agreed to a conditions-based approach. The eventual transfer will only come once the security environment in the region allows for a stable transition, when the South Korean military is equipped with core capabilities and is ready to counter threats from the north. Based upon the regular assessment and recommendations by the defense chiefs, the South Korean and the U.S. presidents will determine the appropriate timing for the transition. In a joint press conference, Hagel reaffirmed the U.S. commitment to its ally.
I emphasize that the United States remains committed to using all our military capabilities both on and off the Korean Peninsula, including conventional strike, missile defense, and our nuclear umbrella, to ensure that our extended deterrence is credible and effective.
In line with the delay, the Command Forces Command headquarters will remain in Yongsan Central Seoul until a transfer takes place. It was scheduled to be dissolved to coincide with the transition next year and relocated to another area of the country. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Mention the United Nations here in Korea, especially among the older generation, and it's likely to spur memories of the Korean War and the UN soldiers who fought for the country. Today is United Nations Day around the world, and to commemorate it, students here met with a special guest to give thanks for those sacrifices. Kwon So-ah has their story.
United Nations Day is being celebrated across the world this October 24th with a goal of raising awareness of the organization's aims and achievements. The UN Charter to maintain peace and security around the world came into force after the Second World War ended in 1945.
In Korea, the significance of United Nations Day lies in the huge role UN member states played during the Korean War in the early 1950s. But today, it's not commemorated on a large scale as it used to be when it was a public holiday.
But that doesn't mean that Koreans have forgotten the sacrifices made by the hundreds of thousands of troops dispatched from 16 UN member nations. This group of students met with BBC broadcaster John Hardy, whose father Kenneth is a Korean War veteran, and thanked him.
I think Korea is doing a tremendous job keeping the awareness alive. Unfortunately, officially, I don't suppose that it's come to an end because we're still in an armistice stage.
The war veteran's son added how important he thinks it is for young Koreans to remember where they come from.
I think it's a really honor for us, for a person from the UK to come all over to Korea just to honor his father and giving us an opportunity to express our gratefulness towards them.
My friend had a grandfather who also participated in the Korean War, and he always added to his story that he still loved Korea and he still wanted to help Korea. So that's why this opportunity is really special for me.
Mr. Hardy says he wanted to visit Korea so he could pass on his father's legacy to his children and grandchildren.
It's almost like filling in a gap in our family history. I knew my father had been here. He didn't talk very much about it, and it's always intrigued me what went on during his time in Korea. Korea's been known as the forgotten war for too long.
Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The Korean economy is showing signs that domestic demand is picking up, but the pace of growth has fallen short of expectations. The Bank of Korea says the domestic economy grew 0.9% in the July to September period from a quarter earlier. That, however, was largely due to a low base in the second quarter when domestic consumption shrank following April's ferry disaster that claimed more than 300 lives. Year on year, the Korean economy expanded 3.2%, the slowest pace in 5 quarters. A rise in private consumption, government spending, and construction investment led the third quarter growth, but exports dropped 2.6% due to the sluggish global economy. And staying with the economy, it's earnings season here in Korea. SK Hynix is all smiles over its third quarter figures, while Hyundai Motor and POSCO take a hit due to the strong Korean currency. Here's our Shin Se-min with a snapshot of Korea's corporate health.
Hyundai Motor's third quarter report card is far from positive. Its operating profit fell 18% on year to $1.5 billion, its lowest level in nearly 4 years. Net profit dropped more than 28%. The damage is mostly from unfavorable currency environment, with the strong Korean won and the weak Japanese yen offsetting strong sales in the third quarter. Besides a global trend that's been hitting many Korean exporters, another factor came from within, from its labor union. Work stoppages by some 47,000 unionized workers since August halted the company's production line multiple times. Looking forward, though, the world's 5th largest automaker is expected to bounce back in the next quarter.
The last quarterly report is looking bright for Hyundai Motor as the currency has stabilized since the third quarter and is likely to stay balanced. Also, unionized workers have reached an agreement with management, so if the manufacturing line runs smoothly, the company will churn out a better profit towards the end of the year.
Staying on the earnings front, chipmaker SK Hynix posted record quarterly earnings in the third quarter thanks to increased demand for DRAM chips. The world's number 2 memory chip maker says its operating profit reached nearly $1.2 billion, up more than 11% on year. Increased demand for semiconductors used in smartphones and PCs led the way. And the nation's top steelmaker POSCO posted a 43% hike in operating profit thanks to its high value-added steels, which shined in the third quarter. However, overall, its bottom line was down sharply by more than 60% as it was also hit hard by the strong local currency. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
It's no surprise that there is a vast asset disparity between the rich and poor here in Korea. But the rate of increase in that divide may be getting out of hand. A new report from the nonprofit People's Solidarity for Participatory Democracy shows that assets belonging to the lower 20% of the income bracket expanded by a mere $50 between 2011 and 2012. During that same period, the top 1% saw their assets increase by nearly $370,000. An official at the nonprofit said that the severe economic polarization was having a negative effect on consumer sentiment and the drive to revitalize the economy. Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following this Friday morning. For that, we'll turn to Eunice Kim standing by at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning, Scott.
Now, Eunice, Canada is still reeling from the attacks on its Parliament building and war memorial that left 2 people dead. We're getting new details now of the shooter. What can you tell us?
Right. Well, we're beginning to form a picture of 32-year-old Michael Zihav Bibo, a Canadian citizen who was said to have wanted to go to Syria to join the jihadist fight there. In a press conference earlier this morning, officials of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police said they believe Zihav Bibo had acted alone when he shot and killed reservist Nathan Cirillo at the National War Memorial, hijacked a car, then ran into a Parliament building, armed and struck horror. They said Zihav Bibo had lived in a homeless shelter in Ottawa since early October and had applied for a passport. While they had not cornered a motive yet, authorities suspect it was related to his self-radicalization. Now, earlier, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper had promised to strengthen the nation's terror laws. He asked his MPs to speed up measures to toughen powers of surveillance and detention for the country's security agencies. And out of Wednesday's shooting rampage in the heart of Canada's capital, a hero emerged. Our Choi Yu-sun reports on the man credited with stopping the situation from getting much, much worse.
If it weren't for Sergeant-at-Arms Kevin Vickers, the armed assailant who rampaged in and nearby the Canadian Parliament on Wednesday may have claimed the lives of many of Canada's political leaders. The 58-year-old former Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer shot down the gunman who had stormed into the Parliament's center block just before 10 a.m. Soon after the incident, those who were inside the building tweeted, hailing the RCMP veteran for saving their lives. The Veterans Affairs Minister expressed gratefulness to Vickers for his selfless act, and the Justice Minister called him a true hero. Media outlets also dubbed Vickers a modern-day hero, as seen in interviews with his family and colleagues.
It was an extraordinary relief to know that he was okay, and at the same time very, very proud of what he had to do today.
People who had worked with Vickers in the past described him as a loyal and responsible man, and that they were not surprised to learn of his fearless act. The Sergeant-of-Arms, who's now in charge of protecting safety of the Parliament buildings, was previously responsible for the security of the royal family, including Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Andrew. He had received several honors, such as the Queen's Jubilee Medal, and was present when President Park Geun-hye visited the Canadian Parliament last month. Choi Yu-sun, ARIRANG News.
And on to other news now. Preliminary blood tests have shown that a New York City doctor has contracted Ebola. Dr. Craig Spencer had recently returned from Ebola-ridden Guinea, where he served with Doctors Without Borders. He checked into Bellevue Hospital on Thursday, one of 8 Ebola-ready treatment centers in the state, after developing fever and gastrointestinal symptoms. Now, a follow-up blood test is set to be conducted by the CDC. New York's Mayor Bill de Blasio, assured the public that every protocol had been followed. Earlier, the WHO's Emergency Committee on Ebola reinforced that winning against the Ebola outbreak means stopping the transmission in West Africa. Coming out of its third meeting in Geneva, the committee also said special attention needed to be given to the healthcare workers battling on the front lines. Media in Hong Kong are reporting that celebrities who have supported pro-democracy protesters like Chow Yun-fat, Andy Lau, and Tony Leung could be on a blacklist held by the government in Beijing. Reports say that Chinese propaganda officials have drawn up a list of 47 celebrities and directed mainland Chinese media outlets to keep them out of the press. Chatter on Weibo and other online sites showed some mainlanders already calling for a boycott on the star's work. Most recently, jazz star Kenny G was reprimanded by a Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman after tweeting a picture of himself at a protest site with the wish for a peaceful and positive conclusion. Beijing warned foreigners should not get involved in what it considered an illegal campaign.
On the sidelines of the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference currently underway in Busan, a number of exciting conventions and exhibitions are taking place. One of them focuses entirely on big data, which has emerged as a vital tool for helping businesses grow. Our Kim Ji-yeon takes us there.
The Big Data World Convention 2014 is a chance for international businesses to share the ways they collect and utilize big data to improve operations and decision-making. Big data refers to a massive volume of both structured and unstructured data that is quite difficult to process using traditional techniques. At the event, US-based software provider Hortonworks explained the development and distribution of its open-source platform.
And what people are just realizing how to do is to take that traditional transactional data that they had before, data that they would get from a web form, data that they would get from their ERP systems or something, and marry it with data that's coming from sensors, from social media, from mobile, to try to get a better understanding of their products, their services.
Hortonworks and Korea-based tech giant SK CNC signed a memorandum of understanding in August to collaborate over big data. The deal means SK CNC will adopt the Hortonworks data platform to support its various big data analytic tools. This strategic partnership between the two companies is expected to maximize the way big data is integrated into various sectors in Korea, including telecommunications, finance, security, and manufacturing.
Korea's Science and ICT Minister Choi Yang-i also participated in the event, saying that the country's information and technology sector needs to increasingly incorporate big data and that it falls in line with the government's Creative Economy Initiative. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News, Busan.
2 delegates from Guinea landed at Incheon International Airport late Thursday afternoon, apparently not aware of the fact that their government decided not to send representatives to the ITU Plenipotentiary in Busan due to Ebola concerns. Korea's health ministry says a delegation left Incheon 6 hours later after filling out questionnaires and going through health checkups. Neither of them showed any symptoms of Ebola. Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, the 3 countries worst hit by the outbreak, had earlier agreed not to send delegates to this year's conference upon the request of the Korean government and the ITU Secretary General. Now, fewer Koreans are celebrating their silver and golden wedding anniversaries these days because they aren't staying together long enough. The number of so-called gray divorces or divorces between couples who have been married for 20 years or more has hit a record high here. Connie Lee tells us why.
It's until death do us part. Or not. New data shows that more older people are getting divorced in Korea. It's the so-called gray divorces, or the splitting of couples married for 20-plus years that have been on the steady rise for the past 5 years. And last year, it hit a new high. More than 32,000 of these couples ended their marriages in 2013, making gray divorces the largest portion of all divorces at about 28%. Experts point to the aging population of baby boomers for the large number. But other than that, there is a change in how older spouses view marriages that is prompting them to split.
Different from before, older spouses now seek their personal happiness and fulfillment, especially after their kids are out of the house. If they're not getting that in their marriages, then they are opting for divorce.
The professor adds that there's less of a social stigma attached to divorce than there was decades ago, making it a bit easier for couples to officially end their marriages in court.
So what were the top reasons why Koreans got a divorce last year? Well, data shows that personality differences was number 1, followed by financial problems and domestic issues, such as infidelity.
However, gray divorce isn't just a trend seen in Korea. The United States has been seeing this phenomenon for similar reasons. A recent report called The Gray Divorce Revolution by Susan L. Brown and Ai-Fen Lin says that the number of gray divorces has doubled in the U.S. since 1990. And with lifespans increasing, experts expect more gray divorces in the future. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the 2016 Rio Olympics. That's right, we're still 2 years away, but the Korea Football Association got an early start and named their head coach for the upcoming Olympics in 2016. And what was the worst-kept secret in the KFA, the association finally announced Lee Kwang-jung as the head coach of the Olympic team, as the 50-year-old goes from coaching the Asian Games team to the Olympic team. Of course, head coach Lee led the Asian Games team to their first gold medal in 28 years in Incheon earlier this month, as fans begin to wonder if he'll one day coach the senior team as well. And speaking of the senior team, the national football team has dropped once again in the latest FIFA ranking, hitting their lowest ranking ever again. After hitting their lowest ranking at 63rd last month, the Korean national football team drops again, this time 3 spots, as they're now ranked 66th in the world. The latest FIFA ranking is the lowest ever recorded by the national team after losing to Costa Rica 3-1 earlier this month. And now shifting over to some domestic basketball action in the KBL, the Changwon LG Sakers beat the struggling Anyang KGC 81-75. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the undefeated Goyang Orions take on the Incheon ETland Elephants. And just an incredible start to the game itself, as Incheon outscores Goyang 33-22, with Ricardo Powell scoring 14 points just in the first half alone. Now with Incheon up 49-36 at the half, Goyang Orions teared up in the second half, with Troy Gillenwater putting up 26 points in the game, as the Orions rallied to stay undefeated with an 81-79 victory. And now moving over to some Thursday night's V-League action, starting off in the Women's League, where Hyundai Hillstate took on Hanguk Life Insurance Pink Spiders. Now a lopsided first set in this one, as Hyundai Hillstate takes the first set 25-14 before the Pink Spiders bounce back with a 25-16 second set win. With Hyundai Hillstate led by Polina Raminova's game-high 38 points, Hyundai Hillstate takes the next 2 sets for a 3-1 win. Now, meanwhile, over on the men's side here, the KEPCO Vic Storms taking on the Korean Air Jumbos. A close game all around, but with Korean Air's Michael Sanchez putting up a game-high 27 points, Korean Air takes this game in 3 sets, 3-0. And now finishing things off with the 2014 World Series, as the Kansas City Royals and the San Francisco Giants faced off in Game 2 of the best-of-7 series on Wednesday night. And what started off as a close game between the two teams, that all changed in the 6th inning when the American League champions scored 5 runs in the 6th inning, putting Omar Infante's 2-run home run as they win Game 2 7-2 to even the series at 1-1. Meanwhile, with the series going to San Francisco, Game 3 starters will be Jeremy Guthrie for the Kansas City Royals and Tim Hudson for the San Francisco Giants. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, it's a bit misty here in Seoul and the surrounding areas, but as the temperature increases, it will burn off and the sun will dominate the whole peninsula. Well, the morning lows started out a bit higher today, kicked out in the double digits, and the highs will be slightly milder than yesterday, reaching to above 20 degrees Celsius. So with that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime high in the capital will be topping out at 21, while Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will be all rising to 22 under lots of sunshine. Now on to other regions. It looks like Jeju Island will be making to 21, while Daejeon and Dokdo should see highs of 20 this afternoon. And it looks like beautiful late autumn weather will persist through the weekend. Highs will be remaining on the mild side under plenty of sunshine. So I hope you get to make the best of the fine weather this weekend. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that does it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.